A gracious good morning, everybody, and welcome. We've saved the best for last. This will be the best panel you'll hear today. And when we were doing our prep call, I was scribbling furiously and taking notes because these are some really impressive people who've been thinking deeply about what does a world-class experience look like for aging people in our communities. So I'm Sam Melamed. I'm the chief insurance nerd at NCD. And this panel came out of a conversation from last year's Medicarians where I met Sam Zimmerman and I saw, here's someone who's obsessing about what world-class for the senior community looks like. So we hand curated an amazing panel. I'd love to take 30 seconds, each of you, to just share who you are and what your company does before we dig in. Doug?
We'll start here. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Doug Armstrong with AERP Services and Health Products. If you don't know what my company does, then get out. No. Actually, if I can't really see, but if you could raise your hand if you are 50 years of age or older, please do me a favor and keep your hand up. Now, if you are the family member of somebody who is 50 and older, raise your hand. You are our mission. AERP's vision is a society where everyone can live with dignity and purpose. And our job is to fight for and equip the 50 plus to live their best lives so people can choose how they live as they age. They say our company was founded in 1947 by our founder who found a retired teacher living in a chicken coop. And she fought very, very hard for income and health insurance. And 11 years later, she founded AERP, 65 years ago this year. And 7 years after that, Medicare was signed into law, and Ether was there for that. Healthcare is in our DNA, and in ensuring that consumers have the power, the common purpose and collective purchasing power is who we are at AERP, fighting for the 50 plus and their families.
Great, thank you, Doug. Brian?
Yeah, my name is Brian Park. I'm the CEO and founder of Hank. Thank you so much for having me here. I've worked in product management for about a decade, working at a lot of the fastest growing companies, and I really want to do something that was more personal to me. Whenever I talk to my parents, it always ends with, when are you coming home? And that's been kind of the overarching narrative for my career. And it's really what we're trying to do is solve loneliness and isolation for older adults in a way that respects them and it's a way where it kind of honors the way that they want to meet. So it's a web platform where you can actually meet people like you based on interest groups and meet them in real life. So it's really cool. There's a lot of activities and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Sam?
Hi, my name is Sam Zimmerman and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sagewell Financial. Sagewell Financial's mission is really simple. I'm building a bank for my mom, and our team is building the banking that our loved ones deserve in retirement. Sagewell is the first and only bank built specifically with every feature and button and nook and cranny just for folks who are entering and navigating retirement. We think of the role of Sagewell Financial as somewhat like payroll and benefits for retirement when our members are the boss.
Thank you. And Ellen?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm Ellen Dalton. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of VillageMD. VillageMD is often described as a disruptor in healthcare, not always positively, but it is absolutely true and even truer from the inside of the organization. We're a relatively new organization. We started just fewer than 10 years ago with a massive, really audacious mission, which was to transform the US healthcare system so that every single patient could get the best quality care regardless of his or her background or resources. It's something that every one of us sort of wakes up thinking about every day. We started out in primary care with a value-based care orientation, and then with a Walgreens partnership moved into retail primary care, so sort of disrupted there. And then just recently acquired a large multi-specialty primary care and urgent care system in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. So we have really grown significantly. I've been there a couple of years, and it's really been an amazing and very dynamic time.
Thank you. So I do think it's really important to understand the context where each member is coming from, because there really are different views and perspectives that they're bringing to this conversation. So now that we start to think about, what are some of the things we've learned on the journey? In our company, we have over 1,000 customers who are over the age of 90. And we used to just think of seniors as a bucket. And just on the prep call, really understanding how everyone here thinks about user segmentation, the spectrum of life, of who you're working with. Brian, why don't you start with some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest surprises for me working on this company was we don't segment the older adult population like we do with the younger population. From the 20 to 40-year-old market, we go 20 to 25, 25 to 30, 35 to 40, and we just really think about them as very different segments. But for older adults, we're like 65 plus, and it's this massive bucket. I spent a lot of time doing research for older adults. One of the funny stories is I went on a cruise because I was like, where do older adults congregate? And so I booked a 7-day cruise for the Bahamas, where I had a bag of Amazon gift cards to learn about how older adults think about themselves. And the biggest takeaway for me was that older adults are very different depending on what life stage they're at. So you really have to understand where users are at and then segment out who your user is, and so you can build the right product for them.
That's great. Sam, any continuation thoughts on how you think about the broader population you're addressing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of segmentation as kind of the turpentine of building a great product. There's a quote from Picasso who says that you get art historians together. They talked about high art versus modern art and all this jazz. When you get great artists together, they talk about what turpentine is good. And user segmentation is the sort of thing that's very easy to mistake, to take lightly, to see a little more of what beyond the page or reinterpret the data. But for us, we see user segmentation as essential from the first touch point with an ad or a mailer, all the way through to the way they want to communicate, the way they want to engage, the features that move them. In many ways, it's the same product, but in other ways, it's an entirely different product based upon the segment that the customer is serving.
That's great. And Ellen,
Yeah.
I know you guys think about this a lot.
We do, and I totally agree about everybody over 65 is the same person, and the day that they turn 65, they automatically become this different person who's now old and frail and whatever, right? So some of that historical thinking is just crazy. So at Village, we use personas, right? A lot of organizations use personas, and more so because we're such a diverse and distributed organization. So we need to be able to help our telephone center agents, our people at the front desk, our providers, whoever they might be, people in technology or finance or whatever. Everybody's minds need to wrap around the special needs, orientations, perspectives, and moments of truth that persona feels and is experiencing and wants to experience in order that we can, again, deliver this world-class experience. So we use personas, and our personas are particularly not oriented around age categories.
Yeah, that's great. I know we'll talk a little bit later also about how people don't necessarily identify with their diseases. Doug, I'd love to hear, there's probably no one in this room who's thought more deeply and spent more time really thinking about what does world-class look like, and you serve not just 65 and older, but also younger Americans and as they age. I'm curious how you think about this.
Well, I think one thing to pick up on the last little question there around the segmentation and world-class experience is, while it is critically important for organizations to have segmentation and persona because it helps you organize the work, it helps you figure out how you're going to manage your business, I am not a segment. I'm a segment of one. And that is the thing to remember, is that the people that we're interacting with, the people that we serve on a daily basis, they are a segment of one. And true world-class experience recognizes that and can provide as much personalization to what that person is experiencing in their life, wherever they are on their journey, on that given day, in that given moment. I think that's the really thing to remember, that individuals are just that. They're individuals, they're segments of one and unique.
Well, that's Yeah, Ellen, you have something.
No, I just wanted to add something that we find more and more is that the aspirations and fears are so common. It doesn't really matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're retired or working, right? Everybody wants someone to take care of them. If they're hurt, if they're worried, if they're sick or whatever, they're afraid of a diagnosis. They're afraid of a financial commitment that they may not be able to make. So there's so many things that are common to our human existence that surpass segments and personas, whatever. And I think sometimes we can lose track of that.
Yeah, just to even build on that, going back to my cruise story, that was also my biggest learning is that there was really not a lot of difference from what the people I was interviewing and what they wanted versus what I wanted. And so when we thought about designing a world-class product for this demographic, it had to be to really honor what their needs and wants were, which are very similar to mine. So building a totally different product for the older adult community was actually kind of early out of the question for us.
That's great. Now, Doug, I'd love to talk a little bit about language. I know this is something that you at AARP think deeply about. And, you know, we hear all the time, old people, seniors, aging. There's a lot of words that are thrown out. I'd love to hear some of the learnings and thoughts that you have.
I think it's really, really important. I mean, as Ellen was saying, we don't wake up at 65 and say, oh my gosh, I'm old today, here's what it is, and I'm gonna change everything from here on out. I mean, people can be, vital until the day they celestially age off of this planet. But I think our language has definitely changed. I mean, senior used to be this awful term, and we at AARP refer to older adults because it's just a different language we use. Working with companies like Allure magazine now no longer use the term anti-aging because it is a negative connotation. Aging is not a bad thing because from the minute sperm meets egg, we are aging, and that's a thing to really remember. But I think language and imagery are also incredibly important. Here's another little stat. The 50 plus make up half of the world's population, but only represent 15% of all images in all media presentations, and only 5% of images represent a 50 plus individual interacting with technology. And the 50 plus individual is 7 times more likely to be depicted negatively in media ads than somebody who is under 50. So language and imagery is really, really important for the fastest growing population on the planet is the 85 plus. The second fastest is the 100 plus. And they say that the first person who will be 150 years old is probably alive today. So thinking about language and imagery, it's kind of like, I will say, like a lot of these conversations talk about like those Medicare people and those. My guess is there are a lot of people out in the audience that are 50 plus from the show of the hands and are 65 plus and are working long into our older years. So I think language, imagery, and how the older populations, are treated and show up are incredibly important.
That's great. I'm not surprised that at AARP they're thinking from a systems level standpoint of how we speak and talk. And now I'm curious about language, imagery from a product standpoint. How do you think about whether it's internally in your company, how you refer to your users?
Yeah, I could maybe jump in here. So we did a lot of Facebook ad testing in the beginning to test out different propositions. And we found that if we use the words old, senior, elderly, or retired, our acquisition cost was almost double or triple, rather than using the words older adult or not mentioning age at all. And that was kind of the clear sign to us is just get all those words out of the site as fast as possible.
We hear there's a lot of marketers here, so take notes. Sam?
Yeah, I'll say at a base level, I would say that what we've discovered in building products and the language around those products is that when we first had our prototype checking account and we were walking our users through it, we built the simplest, tightest, we didn't say any words twice. It was about kind of moving quickly, simplicity, and they hated it. Our customers really were confused. They thought that the steps were distorted or didn't make sense. And so what we found is that, a lot of our customers While I'm kind of online all the time, I normally would have my phone out on stage. I can't not look at my phone. For a lot of our customers, banking is work. And that work is a process, and breaking down and simplifying step by step the actions that need to be taken. And then sometimes being repetitive. You're making a checking account, you're making a checking account, you're making a checking account, have been really surprising and really foundational differences between the way folks use technology.
And Ellen, I know you've mentioned about people not necessarily identifying with their diseases and people having more complexity around it. How do you think about language in your business?
Yeah, it's really funny, right? So like, don't call me a diabetic. Don't call me depressed. Like I am an individual, to your point, and at any given time, I'm experiencing a set of things, and I am none of those things. I'm me, right? I'm just experiencing them. So we're really careful to set expectations around what your experience should be, what you should demand from that experience, and then presenting information about condition, about medications, about treatment, et cetera, in as holistic a way as we can. Now, clearly, if somebody wants a prescription for medication X, they want that, and they know what its name is and they know what it's for or whatever, so that's kind of a clear transaction. But we really bend over backwards to not connect a condition or a disease with a person. Many times, it is not even the prevalent thing that's on the person's mind. So for instance, we're just now in the process of rethinking the check-in process, right? We all know how annoying that check-in process is. You look at all the same information or whatever, you're swipe, swipe, swipe. But now what we're doing is starting the conversation about care earlier with no information about your disease or your condition or your weight or whatever. We're asking simple questions like, what would you like to talk to your care team about today? Is there something in your life that changed that you would like to tell us? Is there something that you're worried about that you would like to share? Again, these aren't questions related to depression or diabetes or heart failure or anything else. These are human questions that open a conversation for an individual and his or her care team. That's really what we're trying to do.
That's great. So we've all used products or services that were designed for the aging community and thought, they just don't get it. We've seen our grandparents, our parents, and we've all seen that. In our company, we had an aha where we were sitting around and talking about our mission and how amazing it is to help people improve their health and build a world-class experience. And our head of operations said, I stare at spreadsheets all day. I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel that. And so from then on, we said, okay, at every senior meeting, we need a couple of stories from member care of how we delighted a customer, exceeded their expectations, impacted a life, to live and breathe that throughout the organization. And so obviously, culture is super important. The culture at your workplace and how you think about and want to love on these members is going to really influence things. So I'd love to just go down the line, and Doug, we'll start with you. What kind of ways do you infuse this love of this community into your culture, and how does that impact the products ultimately?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a day in, day out. Every aspect of our organization is organized around that. Maybe one thing I'll pop in is one thing that our organization at ERP is really involved in is our motto is to serve, not to be served. And that was from our founder originally. So we actually have a very important culture of volunteerism amongst the staff. I mean, hey, employees get 6 paid days a year to volunteer in the community if they're volunteering for something that affects the 50 plus in their families, which is basically pretty much everything. We have 50,000 volunteers a day doing activities in state offices all across the country, because also one of the things that we know is that volunteerism, it's the culture of resiliency, the culture of sense of purpose, and we know that people who have a positive view of aging and have a positive sense of purpose live longer, they bounce back from illnesses faster, and frankly, they cost less to the healthcare system. So that's just one aspect of what we infuse in everything that we do, is this sort of culture of volunteerism, the sense of purpose, and that sense of resiliency.
That's great.
Yeah, for us, our mission is to get older adults out of their house and into their communities. And that was like a really clear North Star for us early on. And it helped us decide what to build and what not to build. For example, we were investing at one point in posting and liking different comments from peers. It actually did nothing to get people out of their house, but it drove a ton of engagement. We actually decided to kill all those features because it wasn't aligned with our North Star. So when we talk about mission, I think really mission gives clarity to focus in organizations and tells you where you shouldn't go. And from a culture standpoint, for us, one of the big things that we love to do is surprise and delight. That's kind of a mantra that we try to really exhibit as a company. So every week, at least one member of the team has to surprise and delight a customer in real life, whether it's going to one of the coffee chats and buying the group coffee, whether it's calling somebody. It's those little touches on a consumer product that takes it over the edge into a really magical experience. And I think that's really important.
All right. I hope the NCD team is taking notes here. We're instituting that next week. Sam?
Yeah, so our mission, my mission is to build a bank for my mom, and our team's mission is to build the banking that our loved ones deserve. And so what that means is that our first users are always our parents. So mom launch and parent launch is an actual kind of, there's an environment where a feature is released where our parents give feedback on the features. Some of it has mother's love, some of it is very direct and love expressed through precision. But I think that practice and seriousness and gravity in building our technology and naming the bias, naming the preference, naming the personal experiences that brought us here have centered operationally building product. Second thing, we filter for it in hiring. We have a set of questions. We do want people who are choosing to work with us because of the problems we're addressing, and we think that needs to be kind of from very first touch on. The last thing I would say from a mission perspective, similar to the story point, I think for us, fraud is a really big and important issue. And I think the pervasiveness and complexity of it has been really overwhelming at times to see. And so we make a practice to talk about the highs and the lows. And so we talk about the stories where we save folks money, where we help them plan for their retirement, as well as the challenges whenever folks have lost financial security, lost material money. And we actually think that there's more value to be created when folks in the pain, in the negative points, in attempting to rectify the situation than the positive. We actually try to center the negative stories and the negative parts of our customers' experience and our mission as a way to kind of align.
That's great. Very practical take-home value there. Ellen, would love to hear a little bit. I know you focus a lot on culture and the mission and.
Yeah, and so many things that other panelists have said, we have also been focusing. But just to pick up on something that Sam said, one of the challenges that we had as we expanded so quickly, and we all know how difficult it is to hire and retain people now in healthcare and in other industries, was how did we think about experience design for our older patients in a way that would encompass everybody in the organization, whether you'd been there for 2 days or whether you'd been there for 20 years, as some of the kind of early people and some of the very early practices had been. And so we really focused, again, on the personas and on their journeys, and more on where we saw we lost their trust. And they lost faith in seeing us as this kind of care system, right? That would always lift them up and provide this, really high quality experience. And one of the things we found was in a moment of healthcare complexity, right? So diagnosis, referral, new medication, maybe multiple referrals, maybe multiple medications, maybe a bill gets messed up on the way, right? Those complex transactions were where we really needed to lean in, because that's where the systems that we had in place, our app, our patient portal, other things, they couldn't really help really probably any patient, but they couldn't help this kind of a patient in this complex moment and in this moment of real need and real guidance. And then they would call the call center and they wouldn't be helped particularly well there either. So we really leaned into those moments of complexity that kind of turned into problem spots, right? To help kind of lift the whole system up. And to make sure that our people at Village, no matter what their role, even though they were trying to do their best in that moment, recognized how fragile and vulnerable and potentially angry that patient could become. Not to mention clinically problematic.
Sure. That's great. Yeah, you know, we think all the time, what is the standard, right? How can we set the standard in our mission and in our culture for that service? You know, our member care team knows we talk all about the time. We want them to miss you when you're off the phone. That's the kind of verbiage, and I've learned a lot. I hope, again, our team's taking notes here because there's a lot of follow-up. So before we talk about trust, which I think is a really core and important part of not only how we approach things, but also infusing the product with it, I want to talk briefly about onboarding. You know, we went on a journey of learning that we should make welcome calls to our customers. No insurance companies do that, but it ends up onboarding them in a unique and different way. It's also the #1 source of 5-star Google reviews because people are so surprised by it. And you've each got different onboarding perspective. I'd love to start with the product, guys, with Sam and then Brian, and then we'll expand from there. How do you think about that?
Yeah, so two things. So our customers meet us at a digital bank, and I think there's two things that were really surprising as we went about creating our onboarding. The first is that our customers, from a mission perspective, didn't want our customers to not have two-factor authentication over their banking. A lot of banks, most of our customers' banks they're moving from, they've never had to set up two-factor authentication. And on our onboarding funnel, the worst step is not when we ask for their social security number to create their account, but actually when we onboard and ask them to verify their phone and do two-factor authentication. And so I think that we chose as a company to have worse metrics, to grow slower, to pay more, and invested intensely in increasing the metric. And we have videos, we have explainers, we have a host of a person that they need if they'd like support there, and we have increased that. But part of building and executing on our mission, meant committing to our values of protecting them online, and that meant taking that onboarding hit. The second thing I would say is that our customers generally don't know their bank account passwords. And if they do know their bank account passwords, asking them to enter it into another bank is not comfortable or intuitive or the right equation of trust. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out a lightweight way for our customers to explore and onboard to our product beyond the welcome call. And what we found is that just an e-com-like experience, funding with their debit card, was the right low-lift, familiar way. I don't carry around a debit card. A lot of millennials don't, but a lot of our customers do, and they much preferred that experience. And so I think that onboarding is it's a wonderful maze or video game-like challenge and those are two real sticking points for our customers.
Great. Ryan?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to deliver value in the first 2 to 5 seconds is what we realized. Most people are taking a leap of faith by trying your product out. They see your pretty landing page and they say, this could work for me. And they click the next button, and then they see you asking for information like your age, your name, where you live. So you're extracting value before you can actually prove to them why you can solve their problem. And so the first really 5 seconds is key about showing them that you can actually deliver on the problem that they're trying to solve. So for us, one thing that we're investing in, we're solving loneliness in your community, is showing you everybody that's around you and all the different things to do around you. And so you get proof points from us that this is actually going to work for me. And then the second thing that we invest in is building investment throughout the onboarding process. So for us, profile building is really important. We do interest-based matching. So we want you to build a profile out so you can also showcase it to others. So we have you build out your profile as you're going through onboarding. So there's enough investment in it. So when we ask you to actually sign up for an account, it's not as big of a leap as, hey, I see the landing page, give me your account information. So it's really about delivering value and then also creating investment throughout the onboarding process.
That's great. So Doug, before I come to you to talk about meeting them where they are, Ellen, I'd love to hear, you mentioned something about tours and how you think about onboarding with a different kind of, more of a service.
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. So we opened over the course of the last few years 200 primary care practices in Walgreens. So you actually walk into the Walgreens vestibule, and behind this door that wall that you can't see all the way through is this beautiful, modern, full primary care office. Just beautiful. And yet a lot of people were walking by that glass door and thinking, hey, this is a Walgreens, what could possibly be back there? So we had to institute this really kind of high-touch outreach program of bringing people in for tours. Now, like I toured the place where I gave birth to my first son. I think that's the only tour I've ever had in my whole healthcare experience. But so people really weren't used to the idea that you would go into this beautiful place and it would be, quiet and serene, and it kind of looks like a spa, and you'd get to meet the providers and see the care team and see how lovely and high quality everything was. And these tours ended up being a really critical moment in the way that we were able to bring many folks who are either Medicare eligible or Medicare patients into a new world of primary care. But I just wanted to add one more thing, that philosophically, one of the things that we've really focused on is recreating the expectation of what primary care should be. And we use words like demand better primary care. This is what you should expect. You should expect coordinated, longitudinal primary care. That is what primary care, the Village Way, is. And so just sort of bringing people in with those notions of not being able to get to their primary care doc, using urgent care when they had to, or using their specialist as their core provider, that's been a really big part of our onboarding as well, that the tour helps with.
Thank you. That's great. So Doug, before we talk about trust, and I'm going to have you lead off that part, any thoughts on meeting your community where they are?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we at AARP aspire to be the wise friend and fierce defender. For the 38 million members that we have, 1 in 3 50-plus Americans are part of our family. But and how to get there, interesting from the last question is we aspire also from every employee in the organization to be an everyday innovator in aging. From Joanne Jenkins, our CEO, she made a very, very large investment, and every single employee at our company is trained in human-centered design. Regardless of your level in the organization, we even have innovation champions that are sort of uber human-centered design folks. And that permeates everything that we do. We try and fail fast, forward, and cheaply. And learn from it, because it's actually not a failure if you learn from it. So that is something sort of in our culture that regardless of whether you are on the social mission advocacy side, whether you are on the licensing and corporate side, everybody goes to work every day trying to think about new ways of solving the problems of individuals, but also not doing things to people, but doing it with them. I think that's one of those sort of big experiences. Like, the You think about how, like Medicarians, you got this, 8,000-page Medicare and You handbook that comes out from CMS, and people are like, what in the world am I supposed to do with this? At a time when people want predictability and stability, the most emotional decision in their lives, healthcare, becomes the most complicated that it could possibly be. And people think that that's just like it's just a logical, kind of conversation. Do you want Med Sup or MA? One thing is this, one thing is a not. It is actually not a rational decision for those individuals, and they don't like to be told, they like to be helped. And I think that's what we do, kind of everything from education to experiences to our publications, which is the largest read magazine on the planet. People's number 2.
So let's roll that right into trust.
But it really is.
Yeah, I know you're thinking about it and you're talking about it all the time. How does AARP think about earning, winning, keeping, valuing the trust of your members?
It is showing up as the wise friend, the fierce defender. We are a political but not a partisan organization. We do not and have never given to a campaign or to a party, even though people think we're one way or another. We fight for issues. We fight for issues, and we show up, in the court of the 50 plus every single day in every single community. We've got offices in all 50 states and territories, and we aspire to show up locally and deliver on the promises that we make. Because the instant that we don't, the phones will ring off the hook.
That's exactly right. Brian?
Yeah, I think for brevity's sake, you need to have a brand that really delivers a value prop, and you need to deliver on it consistently and without fail. And that, over time, is what builds trust. There's also trust from the safety component for us in particular, because we're having people meet in real life. So you spent a lot of time with a lot of the trust and safety teams at the largest social media companies, and we really mimicked their playbook for us. So that's been a really good learning experience.
That's great. Sam?
I think in many ways, Sagewell's big bet is on trust. I think I'm of the opinion that any good idea, like 20% of people should laugh at it because it sounds a bit crazy. And a digital bank for older adults, 20% of people would laugh at that. And so we iterated really heavily on a scalable path to trust, a way for our customers to use and engage materially with the bank online, and it's working. It was not our first hypothesis. It was actually our 8th hypothesis as measured by time to greater than $10,000 in their account. And it was quite an adventure to get there. And so I think of defining objective definitions of trust, executing and being relentless about that, and being willing to be crazy, particularly whenever ageism or other assumptions are making folks laugh, is, I think, core to what we're doing.
So Ellen, obviously of all of us here, the actual caregiving and being the medical providers is maybe the situation where trust is the most important. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine that you have this relationship with this person who you see a few times a year, you take your clothes off, they weigh you, you know what I mean? Like that you tell them things about what's keeping you up at night. I mean, the most amazing, trusted things happen in an exam room, right? And then many trusted transactions happen around that, right? Before it or after it. What we have found is that most people believe wholeheartedly in their doctor. They believe however it is that they got there, however long they've been seeing that provider, they believe that that person is the best person for them and is going to take care of them. Where things get looser is the rest of the system around that wonderful transaction of trust that happens in that exam room or over the phone. And it's interesting because in some ways we want to preserve that, that single relationship in that exam room between that human and that other human. And in other ways we realize that the rest of the system, the access, the payment, the questions, the confusion around the medications, whatever it is, that all has to elevate the trust as well. It can't be different. I know we're out of time.
Well, we hit it on the button. 0, 1, go. Thank you all so much. Hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, man.